Amiano, Adkins, Bell, Berryhill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler, Calderon, Campos, Carter, Cedillo, Chesbro, Conway, Cook, Davis, Dickinson, Donnelly, Ing, Fuhr, Fletcher, Fong, Fuentes, Furtani, Gaines, Galgiani, Garrick, Gatto, Gordon, Gurrell, Grove, Hagman, Halderman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Weso, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Lara, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mansour, Mendoza, Miller, Mitchell, Monning, Morrell, Nastande, Nielsen, Norby, Olson, Pan, Perea, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Imada, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, a quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and the gallery to please stand for today's prayer. We ask Assembly Chaplain Father Constantine Papadimos to offer today's prayer.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, you have given every one of us a measure of faith. Yet the Scriptures tell us that faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead. If the faith inside of us doesn't get expression through our actions and words, it will no longer be alive. Strengthen us, Lord, to put our faith in action in order to keep it alive. Inspire us to pray more often, to worship you regularly, and to be inclined to show love to those around us. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. We ask Assemblymember Fuhrer to lead us in the pledge. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Wednesday, January 4, 2012. The Assembly met at 10 a.m. Honorably Federal Moss, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly
Mr. Allen
presiding.
moves and Mr. Hagman seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Allen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assemblymember Carter to have guests and photographers on the floor.
Without objection.
I also request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assemblymembers Fuentes, Furtani, Gordon, Harkey, Jones, Mitchell, Solario, and Wachowski to speak on adjourned in memory today.
Without objection.
Okay, go on. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah. Warren?
Pursuant to Assembly Rule 77.2, I'm re-referring the following bill to committee. Yeah. Mr. Allen, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Assembly Rule 96, I am requesting unanimous consent to refer bills to committee. AB 645, Davis, from the Banking and Finance Committee to Higher Education Committee.
Without objection.
Requesting to move AB 1165, Akajian, to the Judiciary Committee only.
Without objection.
Under file notice and waivers, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 56 to allow the Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee to notice AB 157 Jeffries for hearing on Tuesday, January 10th at 1:30 p.m. in room 444, pending re-referral for the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I also request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule to allow the Health Committee to notice AB 761 Hernandez for hearing on Tuesday, January 10th, 2012, in room 4202, pending re-referral from the Business Professions and Consumer Protections Committee.
Without objection.
Yes, I also request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 56 to allow the Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee to notice AB 1005 Dickinson for hearing on Tuesday, January 10th, 2012, at 9 a.m. in room 437, pending re-referral from the Natural Resources Committee.
Without objection.
Thank you. Also, at the request of the authors and pursuant to Assembly Rule 78, I'm giving a one-day notice of intent to remove the following bills from the inactive file. File item A13, AB 1276 FUR. File item A-X. So we're requesting they be removed.
Okay. One-day notice.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, we have some guest introductions. Please give the members courtesy as they introduce their guests. Mr. Hagman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's my great honor to introduce for the Inland Empire Caucus Supervisor Gary Ovitt, who does a wonderful job for us in San Bernardino County as former chairman, as well has been on the board as former mayor and council member from the city of Ontario as well. So we welcome Gary.
Business on the daily file, there is none. So this concludes the business on the daily file. We're now going to move to announcements and adjourn in memories. Okay, Mr. Knight is going to introduce his guests.
Members, it is my great honor to introduce my family. They have driven up with me today. I have my beautiful wife Lillian in the back, and my oldest son Christopher, who will be attending Northern Arizona in the fall, and my youngest Michael, who will be going to high school, Quartz Hill High School, in the fall.
Ms. Brownlee has an announcement. Ms. Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to say that the Education Committee will meet at 11 o'clock today in room 126 for a brief hearing to hear one bill.
It's 11 o'clock, room 126, the Education Committee. Session schedule is as follows. Friday, January 6th, no check-ins, no session. Monday, January 9th, floor session at 12 noon. Tuesday through Thursday next week, check-in session. Friday, January 13th, floor session at 9 a.m. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. We are now going to move to requests to adjourn in memory. Colleagues, requests to adjourn in memory, please take your seats. Mr. Gordon, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to request that this assembly adjourn in memory of Roland Edward Giannini. Roland Giannini was born in San Francisco, grew up in Redwood City. He attended San Jose State, and following completion of his service at San Jose State, he entered the U.S. Naval Reserve. He served in Korea. When he returned from service in Korea in 1958, he began work in the assessor's office in San Mateo County. He rose through the ranks, and in 1978, the citizens of San Mateo County elected him their assessor. He served for 15 years as the elected assessor of San Mateo County. Upon his retirement, he continues community service by serving on the Planning Commission of Redwood City and working with the Historical Association of San Mateo County. He has died on October 21st at the age of 80. He's survived by his wife of 53 years, Celeste, and 3 children. We adjourn in his memory and in honor of his great public service. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, the House will be in order. Members will take their seats for adjourned in memory. All members, please take your seats for adjourned in memory. Please show your colleagues the respect they deserve. Ms. Mitchell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I think it's a wonderful tradition that we have the opportunity to adjourn in memory of Californians who've served us and have done remarkable things on behalf of all the residents of the state. I think it's particularly important that we as a body recognize those who have passed who were members of the body itself. And so given that, on behalf of all of us, I stand today and request that we adjourn in memory of former state assemblywoman and former state senator Teresa Hughes. Senator Hughes was a trailblazing legislator whose agenda covered the wide range of issues that were near and dear to the hearts of her average and often underserved constituents and met the needs of residents throughout the state of California. Senator Hughes was the second African-American woman elected to the California legislature in 1975. I think that's significant when we recognize statehood was 1849. Do the math. Senator Hughes was the first woman and African-American to sit on the Senate Rules Committee, the first female chairperson of the Legislative Black Caucus, and one of the first chairpersons of the Women Legislators Caucus, and the longest-serving woman ever elected to the California legislature. That term, her service to the California legislature spanned 25 years, 17 in this House and 8 in the Senate. Education was her focus. So were health, public safety, consumer rights, and multiculturalism. As a senator, Hughes carried the legislation that created the California Museum of African American Culture and was responsible for the appropriation of $40 million for the reconstruction of the California Science Center, both of which are located in Exposition Park. She authored the Hughes Earthquake Safety Act of 1987, which allocated state funds for the reconstruction of non-conforming school buildings. She created the Los Angeles County High School for the Arts and the Hughes Hart Education Reform Act of 1983, funded proposals to upgrade the state's scholastic programs, and also established the Resolution and School Violence Reduction Program, which provides approaches for public schools experiencing violence on school campuses. As chair of the Assembly Education Committee, Hughes co-authored a bill in 1983 that set state graduation standards, lengthened the school day and year, raised teacher salaries and standards, and required prospective teachers to pass a basic skills test. In response to the 1996 passage of Prop 209, which prohibited the consideration of race, sex, and ethnicity in the admission of students to the University of California system, Senator Hughes formed the Select Committee on College Admissions and Outreach, whose work revealed the devastating statistical effect Prop 209 had on Black and Latino enrollment in UC schools. In the field of health, Hughes led the fight to provide research grants for lupus and high blood pressure, to protect physicians from civil and criminal liabilities flowing from AIDS test results, and to provide for adequate compensation for developmental disabilities work activities programs such as the Goodwill Industries. In the area of public safety, Hughes wrote laws establishing a gang and drug prevention program in public schools, increasing the prison terms of gang-related drive-by shootings, and instituted a training program for prosecutors on gang-related crimes. During her terms in the Assembly and in the Senate, Hughes was responsible for laws that provided $100 million to construct or rehabilitate low and moderate income housing, that established anti-redlining home loan laws, and required the provision of adequate notice before a homeowner loses his property due to foreclosure. Teresa Patterson Hughes was born October 3, 1931 in Harlem, the only child of Layla and Rogers Patterson. She earned a bachelor's degree in physiology and public health from Hunter College and a master's in education from New York University. She was the mother of two, Vincent Hughes, who is an East Coast attorney, and her daughter, Deidre Hughes Hill, is currently a Los Angeles Superior Court judge and the former president of the Los Angeles Police Commission. As a young woman working here as a staff member in the late 80s, early 90s, I clearly remember what it felt like to walk the halls and have the opportunity to have a conversation with a woman that I had read about as a poli-sci student in high school and as an undergrad. She was an incredible role model. As you can hear in terms of her legislative history, was a real visionary and had a strong, deep commitment to public service, which I think is unique in this era of term limits. And when we read about public perception of our jobs every day in the press and we're referred to as quasi-criminal, I think it's important to recognize the contributions of someone who committed 25 years of her life to improving the state that we all now work and live in. I learned a great deal from her. She hired women in leadership roles in her staff, and I hope, recognizing that the last seat she sat in on this floor was actually my seatmate's seat, I hope that I can channel Senator Hughes on a regular basis. And those of you who don't know her or didn't know her story, I'd invite you to look her up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Nielsen.
Mr. Speaker, I am moved also to express my sympathies to the family of Terry Hughes and attest to the wonderful personality. As I remember and think of Terry, her commanding warmth, those words describe Terry Hughes, a commanding warmth. And in all the intensity and long days that we spend here and the acrimony that sometimes comes to visit, Terry never put on a gloomy countenance. She would always be smiling and friendly. Reaching across the aisles, and as Republican leader, I teamed up and worked with her on that Hart-Hughes education reform, which was, in fact, education reform maybe before its time, when there was an awful lot of opposition or even touching or criticizing in any way public education. Terry was willing to do it. But most important, a wonderful credit again to this institution, an example, ladies and gentlemen, that we should follow. Please express my sympathies to her family.
Thank you. Ms. Harkey.
Thank you. Members, I rise today to honor a dearly departed good friend and a woman to be admired from my little local community of Dana Point, Doris Walker Smith. She tragically died in a house fire with her husband Jack Smith on October 31st, 2011 at the age of 78. Doris was an award-winning historical writer and served as the official historian for Orange County and my hometown of Dana Point. Doris taught history at 2 local community colleges as well. Several of her books have been named Best Historical Book of the Year by Southern California media professionals. One contest judge called the author's published works informative, entertaining writing that shows a thorough understanding of our local hidden treasures. Detailed and also easy to understand, they inspire us to think about our environment. Walker is best known, of course, for her definitive illustrated history book, Dana Point Harbor, Capistrano Bay, Home Port of Romance, that still is available in its 25th year and 4th edition. Her book, Sections of Orange, Orange County's official centennial edition, took a national first place in 1989. A copy is sealed within the Centennial Time Capsule at the old Orange County Courthouse. A resident since the first housing tract of 1963 in the city of Dana Point, Doris was the co-founder and director and honorary life member of our Historical Society and founder of our annual Festival of Wales. It has become quite a big quite a big festival and parade. She was nationally honored for her Orange County centennial history, and Doris was a prolific writer with the following books without limitation to her credit: Orange County Then and Now, Dana Point Harbor, Capistrano Bay, as I've mentioned, home port for romance, Dana Point Images of America, Adventurer's Guide to Dana Point, Orange County Adventures with Children, Mission Viejo, The Ageless Land, Coastal Reflections, History of Coastal Municipal Water Districts, Orange County Centennial Celebration, Sections of Orange, The Whales of Capistrano Bay, Heritage of San Clemente, celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Spanish village by the sea. She is survived by her sons Brent, Blair Walker, and her brother Alan Isaac, and a granddaughter. She will be greatly missed in our community. She was a lovely woman, always enthusiastic, always upbeat, always there to help, and one of the premier volunteers, I think, in the county of Orange. She arrived in our county as an adult, hadn't been educated on the East Coast, and raised her two sons alone. She did this to survive, to make a living, but also as a passion, an absolute passion. So her passing was sudden. We were shocked, and she will be terribly missed. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Harkey. Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to adjourn in memory of Howard Adler, the former chairman of the Democratic Party of Orange County. On December 18th of this past year, Howard passed away after a prolonged illness in his Fullerton home. He was 68. Howard was born in 1943 in Brooklyn, moved to California with his family in 1955, and graduated from Anaheim High School. He attended Cal State Long Beach, where he served as student body president, and graduated in 1965 with a BA in political science. From 1963 to 1974, Mr. Adler served as congressional aide to Representative Richard Hanna, eventually becoming his chief of staff. Howard went on to a successful career developing retail malls. He also lectured at UC Irvine's Graduate School of Management, served on the board of the Southwest Community Center in Santa Ana, and volunteered as a mentor at Santa Ana Pio Picos Elementary School. Howard served as the Orange County Democratic Party chairman in the 70s, the 90s, and in 1983 he founded the Democratic Foundation of Orange County. The foundation is a group of local successful Democrats and major donors who help advance the party's causes. For serving his community for decades and his advocacy on behalf of Orange County residents, I would like to adjourn in memory of Howard Adler. Howard will forever be missed by his wife, Louise, and his two daughters, Leah and Raquel. Thank you.
Mr. Wachowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in memory of the mayor of Fremont, Bob Wasserman, who passed away last week. Bob was 77 years old. I had the pleasure of serving with him on the Fremont City Council for six years, and it's a great loss for the 16th largest city in the state of California. Bob dedicated his whole life to public service. He was in the Korean War, went into law enforcement in his native Los Angeles, and then in 1978 he became the chief of police. In 76 he became the chief of police of Fremont. He served in that capacity until 1992. There was a recall election in Fremont, and he stepped down as chief of police, retired, and became a city council member. And he served on the Fremont City Council until he passed away last week. Bob was somebody who changed. He was not afraid to look at the facts and to change. He was a big-time smoker, and he voted in the city of Fremont to ban our smoking ordinance, which at the time was one of the stiff ordinances. In 1998, I was drafted by some community activists because Bob had voted against an affordable housing project, and they had drafted me to run against him. So we were sort of adversarial at the beginning. And he changed to become a champion of affordable housing after he saw the need in our community for people, the everyday working people, to have a decent place to live. He was against mixed use. He was like big box Bob, and he learned over time to have the community together and have active streets in our suburban town, and he changed. He was not the biggest environmentalist, and the city of Fremont, one of his last act officially as Fremont. They updated their general plan, and they had an overlay of sustainability, which would have been unheard of for Bob Wasserman when he got elected to mayor the first time in 2004 and 2008. He was my friend. I grew as a young city council member under his tutelage. He'll be missed. My prayers go out to his wife Linda, his son Dan, and Jill. The city of Fremont and the state of California has lost a real champion.
Thank you, Mr. Wachowski. Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise today on behalf of the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus and its chair, Assemblymember Warren Furutani, to ask that this Chambers adjourn in memory of a civil rights hero and iconic leader in the Japanese American community, Gordon Kiyoshi Hirabayashi, who passed away just this past Monday, January 2nd, at the age of 93 in Alberta, Edmonton, Canada. He had unfortunately suffered from Alzheimer's, and he struggled mightily with that condition. However, today what I want to point out to all of us here in this chambers is that every community has its heroes, and particularly those of us who continue to be students of civil rights and civil liberties. The name Gordon Kiyoshi Hirabayashi will be remembered, and he is eulogized today in both the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times as one of 4 Japanese Americans during the World War II internment period to challenge the evacuation order, to defy it, and to refuse to comply. And as a result of that stand, Mr. Hirabayashi, along with Min Yasui, Fred Korematsu, who we now know is memorialized here in California on an annual basis, and the only woman to challenge the internment order, Mitsuya Endo. Mr. Hirabayashi was a student at the University of Washington at that time as a senior, refused to comply with the order, was arrested, convicted, and jailed. Curiously, this was an interesting side point on that period of time, that for some reason, although his conviction was held in the state of Washington, he was going to be sent to prison in the state of Arizona, but there were no funds to transport him to prison, so he hitchhiked his way to Arizona to begin to serve his sentence. He certainly obeyed the law, even though he did not agree with it. Mr. Hirabayashi, upon his release from prison, and certainly following the war, went on to earn not only his bachelor's degree, but his master's and his PhD back at the University of Washington in the field of sociology, and went on to a long and distinguished career. But it was a phone call from a now retired professor of law, Peter Irons, during the late 70s and early 80s that changed Mr. Hirabayashi's life. When Mr. Irons, or Dr. Irons, was part of a research team that had been working for many, many years to uncover and find other facts out about that period of time, led to the successful turning over in the case of Coram Nobis, the overturning of the convictions that were upheld by the United States Supreme Court, and led to an apology from the United States government and reparations to Japanese Americans totaling at that time about $1.2 billion. And so it is with great respect and humility and honor that I ask our chambers today to remember the life and the sacrifice and the service, sometimes quietly done and without a lot of fanfare, the name of Gordon Kiyoshi Hirabayashi, who will remain not only a Japanese American icon, but I hope a California and an American icon as we begin a new year and we address many of the same issues about the balancing of civil liberties in our country. On behalf of all of us, I ask that we adjourn in memory of Mr. Hirabayashi today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Yamada. I'd like to take a minute and recognize a great Californian who has joined us, former Assembly member Senate Pro Tem from 1994 through 1998, former Attorney General, current State Treasurer, Bill Lockyer. Okay, a couple more adjourned memories. Mr. Jones.
Speaker and members, I rise today to ask for adjournment in memory of Nelson Mack Edward McWilliams. Passed away on Tuesday, December 20th, 2011. He was born in Washington, D.C. in 1957. He joined the U.S. Navy in 1977, and he retired in 1999 as a Navy chief after 22 years with the Navy. While stationed at the Navy Recruiting District San Diego, Mack married Susan Price. On returning to civilian life, he helped start up the San Diego Defense and Space Consortium and then performed security consulting. He again switched gears and served his community for several years with the Ramona Chamber of Commerce. In 2007, U.S. Congressman Duncan Hunter needed a full-time staff assistant to help with fire victims and called upon Mack. He followed that assignment as the go-to guy in helping small businesses throughout San Diego by cutting bureaucratic red tape. He continued with Congressman Duncan D. Hunter and was responsible for assisting active and retired military personnel. He was a proud veteran who served in the Navy and continued serving people on veterans and military issues. I ask that we adjourn in memory of Mack McWilliams. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to adjourn in the memory of Julianne Reles, who passed away at the age of 56 on New Year's Eve. She was born in the city of Los Angeles to Elvira and Angel Orozco and resided in the city of San Fernando most of her life. After graduating from Alemany High School, and Julie went on to receive an Associate of Arts in Child Development from Los Angeles Mission College, a BA in Art Education from Cal State University Northridge, a Master of Arts degree in Human Development from Pacific Oaks College, and was in the process of completing her PhD in Education. Her contributions to the San Fernando Valley, and in particular the city of San Fernando, were very large. She was a founding member and teacher at Escuela de la Gente Children's Center. She was the owner and director of the Reles Gaviota Family Child Care Home in San Fernando and a parent education occupations instructor for the Los Angeles Unified School District. For 20 years, Julie also served as a professor of child development at Los Angeles Mission College. Julie also served as mayor and city council member of the city of San Fernando from 2003 to 2009. During her tenure on the council, she strongly supported the continuation of programs for children, youth, and seniors. Julie was an incredible woman who leaves a lasting legacy and will be loved and remembered for her strong and unconditional love for her family and her community. She's survived by her husband, Joe, her children, Nicole, Iris, Camille, and Joseph, and grandchildren, Jason, Xochitl, Maria, and Anabel. My thoughts and prayers are with the loved ones of Julianne Reles, and she will be missed. Thank you.
Please bring those names to the desk to be printed in the journal. I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Allen moves. Mr. Hagman seconds that this House stand adjourned until Monday, January 9th at 12 noon. Quorum call is lifted. Colleagues, please don't forget, though, that there's a Democratic caucus in the members' lounge right now.